DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. Where is it? And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, especially yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one neatly packaged framework, one philosophy, one approach, one way of being, one movement. We wrote a book on this. We got more coming on that I'm not even going to mention right now, but you are listening to the daily masterclass that you know about that is called, all of this is called, Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is leveraging your standout assets. Leveraging the most valuable assets of you personally, not of everybody else, but your most valuable assets, whatever those assets happen to be. Now, before I get further into this introduction and into our content, I want to let you know that I have a texting community. I just opened up this texting number where you can send a text to me. It will come to my phone. You get to add me to your phone. I add you to my phone, and we'll be able to communicate back and forth. And you're going to get special stuff that I only send to my text list, not to my email list, not to anyone else. That number is 305-384-6894. So send me a text right now and make sure you're in the group. 305-384-6894. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this topic here today, leveraging your standout assets, because I was listening to this woman speaking on a particular topic. I don't even remember exactly what the topic was, but I remember listening to her talk, and she didn't really have any substance. She wasn't really saying anything. Everything she was saying was very empty. You know, and I talked about being a person of substance back in episode 1286. But this woman who was saying a whole lot of nothing when she was talking, she is well known in her space, and she will continue to be known in her space not because of what she was saying, but because of the many attributes of hers that have nothing to do with what she says or what she writes or even how well she does her job. And this is part of the game, and we're going to discuss that part of the game here today. That even though this person was speaking and they weren't really saying anything, I know that despite their lack of substance, they're going to continue to be known because they had other attributes that draw people to them aside from the main thing, quote unquote, the main thing that they were offering them. Maybe this woman is completely aware of this. Maybe she's not. I don't really think she was, but the game is working for her one way or another. Today, I'm going to break it down analytically, and we will understand why the game is happening the way that it is. Because many times in life, people are either creating success or they are cultivating failure, and they think it's because of one thing, but it's actually because of a completely different thing or a completely different set of things that they are succeeding and or failing. In other words, harking back to yesterday's episode, they are not even aware of the formulas that are working for or against them. But again, because you're listening to this show, you are tuned into this masterclass, you will understand these formulas, whereas many people do not understand the formulas that are causing their failure and or causing their success. So let's get right into it. Point number one, the topic once again is leveraging your standout assets, and leveraging your assets is a formula within itself. Point number one, I'll tell you that I am personally, and if you listen to the show for even 30 days, you would know, I'm not a fan of identity politics. Identity politics being, all right, we need to put more females on the platform because it's been mostly males, or you need to bring in more people of color because it's been mostly white people, or we need to bring in more people who are LGBTQ because everybody who's in here is straight. That's identity politics, meaning we need to give more to this group so we can kind of balance things out because it hasn't been quote unquote balanced up to this point. If you did not hear any of the episodes where I talked about equality, and at least the way that people talk about it these days, and why it is a fruitless chase that people seem to be, even campaigning and building their whole, quote unquote careers around. Listen to episode 1622, where I told you why equality is impossible. I told you about episode 1619, where racial equality is a fight that is not going to be won, even though people keep fighting it. Episode 730, why equality is a myth. Those 3 episodes will help you. They'll give you enough on that topic of identity politics. I was listening to an episode of the Tim Ferriss show not too long ago, and Tim Ferriss has a self-titled show. He's also the author of a 4-hour series of books. And he was doing an open Q&A with some members of his audience. And someone said to him, one of the comments / questions was, Tim, why don't you have more females on your show? Because Tim's show is an long-form interview show, and I really like his because he goes in depth. He's one of the people whose long-form interview shows I actually like because he goes in depth, because he spends 2-3 hours with his guests, and you really get depth from people when you talk to them for 3 hours. Whereas it's really hard to get depth from a guest when you only talk to them for 30 minutes. And listen, it's not a knock on anybody whose show I've been on, but I've been on many people's shows when we're first starting to record. They say something like, well, I keep the episodes relatively short. It'll be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I don't really get to get in depth at any point of anything that I talk about when the interview is that short, because we don't have enough time for us to get deep. First, we got to get past the surface, then we get to the deeper level, but we need time to get there. It's just like, you can't meet somebody in the mall and propose to marry them. Maybe you could get a phone number or a Starbucks date, but it takes time to go any deeper with a person anyway. I'm bringing up Tim Ferriss because he has this really popular, well listened to show. And I suppose most of his guests have been male. I don't know if someone went and did the math on it or whatever. But Tim Ferriss responded when he was asked, why don't you have more women on your show? He said, I choose guests that I find interesting, this is paraphrasing him, regardless of their gender. And I don't try to balance out, I got to have a woman because the last one was a man. And I 100% agree with this. But at the same time, of everything that I just shared, many people out there, whether they're podcast hosts, politicians, influencers, whoever, many of them do not agree with what Tim said. Many of them do not agree with the things that I said about equality and why it is a fruitless chase. People who are out here saying, well, we got to do things to make things more equal. Or they do agree, but they don't have the balls to actually live it out, the fact that they do agree, so they got to do the other thing. So this is what a lot of people do. And this has been happening in America since before many of us were born, and it'll probably keep happening for some time after we're all long dead and gone. Maybe not, but I think it will. And this is what they do. They go and hire people or promote people who are less qualified for the position, but it helps, quote unquote, balance out the numbers. For example, there are women who get promoted and hired for positions that they are unqualified for just because that organization or company or whoever has chosen so many men that they have to choose a woman. So even though the woman is not the next best qualified person, the woman gets chosen because they are going to get the company will get their feet held to the fire if they don't bring a woman in next. And ladies who are listening to this right now, if I got this wrong, you let me know. There are people of color who get chosen for positions or accepted into colleges or hired for jobs who are not more qualified than a person who is not of color. But the person who is not of color doesn't get the job. They get penalized for the fact of their color, not by their lack of ability, not by their lack of achievement, not by their lack of qualifications, but because of their lack of whatever identity that organization feels like they have to hit. And I want y'all to understand, these are governmental policies that sometimes have to be fulfilled. And sometimes it's a governmental policy like affirmative action. Everyone's heard of that. That's a governmental policy that basically says we have to choose, we being an organization or a college or even companies, we have to choose a certain number of people from certain demographics just to balance out certain numbers regardless of that person's qualification. And that's identity politics in a nutshell. And there are other organizations who are not bound by the government. For example, somebody like Tim Ferriss. He has his own podcast. He can choose whoever he wants for his podcast. Now, Tim Ferriss is not a guy who plays the identity politics game, but let me tell you something. There are many podcast hosts and there are many organizations who have conferences who do play the identity politics game. And they say, okay, the last 3 guests were men. Our next guest must be a woman. Even if the next best interesting guest, the person that we most want, is a man, we can't bring him on because we had 3 men in a row. And if we bring in a 4th man in a row, you know what's going to happen? We're going to get a whole lot of flack on social media. We're going to get a lot of hate mail. People are going to start attacking us for being sexist if we don't bring a woman in next. And because people cave to that pressure, they go bring in a woman who is not even as interesting as what the man would have been just because they got to play the identity politics game. Or a person of color or an LGBTQ person because they are playing the identity politics game. I'm telling you all that to tell you this. If you are a person who can leverage the fact, again, you may not even agree with it, but if you can leverage the fact that the identity politics game has to be played by a certain organization, I'm telling you right now, play the game. And this is a person, that's me I'm referring to. I'm telling you, I do not agree with identity politics. I don't like that the identity politics game gets played. At the same time, I do understand that I am a person of color. I do understand that there may be conferences who always bring in white people as speakers, and when they realize that their feet are going to be held to the fire, if they don't start bringing in some people of color, that somebody like me might get pushed to the top of the pile, not necessarily because I'm just this amazing, perfect, eloquent speaker with great content, even though I am, but I'll get chosen not because of any of that. I'll get chosen because they got to pick a black person, and I'm like, hey, I'm black. I'll take that check. Yes, Mr. Conference organizer, I will definitely take the check. I know exactly why they're doing it. We won't talk about it, but I'll take it. That's identity politics. I will play the game. I will gladly take advantage of this process of identity politics that I don't even agree with, but I will take the check. Okay, that's what I'm letting all of you know right now. So any of you who is a female, no matter what color you are, if you are a person of color, no matter what gender you are, if you are LGBTQ, especially if you're female, but male as well, if you're any of those things, listen, the game is leaning in many areas of life. Not everywhere. It's not going to happen everywhere, but in many areas, the game is leaning in your direction right now. Take advantage. That's what I'm telling you. This is one of your assets. Right now, in certain areas, this is an asset. It's your job to know where this is an asset, and it's also your job to understand why this is an asset. I just explained to you the why. It's your job to figure out the where, and then it's your job to go leverage this. All right, this is all part of the game. I told you in episode, I believe it was 12-13, it might have been 13-24, but let me tell you in 1 second so we know. Episode number 13-14 was Hustle, Learning How to Play the Game. Episode 12-10, Don't Complain, Play the Game. So I just told you, again, I hope everybody's listening to what I just said. I just explained to you why I don't agree with it, but I also told you still need to use it. All right, so even if I disagree with something, I can still recognize, like, hey, this is what the fuck is happening anyway, so we might as well accept it. I can disagree with something and still accept the fact that it's happening. So the people who do agree with this identity politics thing, they're looking for you, females. They're looking for you, LGBTQ. They're looking for you, people of color. These are, again, you may be completely unqualified, but the social justice programs, the pressure from the government, the pressure from some influencer who decided to pay attention to you today is causing them to do these things. Does this happen every day? It absolutely does. Do I agree? No. But do I accept it? Yes. What does all this mean for you? Besides what I already told you? Let's move on to point number 2. Oh yeah, we just got started. Point number 2. Topic, once again, is leveraging your standout assets. Your job is to identify where you can make the game work in your favor. Now, I just explained to you a good chunk of that right there in point number 1, but let's go even further. I talked about this, as I said, in episode 12-10. Don't complain, play the game. Now, I am a youngish looking black guy with tattoos who comes from the sports world. All right, that is an accurate description of me. Now, is there more to me than that? Yes, but is that accurate? Is also yes. Audiences that respond to me best. You know what audiences respond to me best, honestly? Or at least what I've seen, or let me say one audience that responds to me really well. That's the best way of putting it. I can't say they're better, but what responds to me really well are audiences of people that are nothing like any of what I just described. In other words, they're not youngish, they are not black, they don't have tattoos, and they're not athletes. Those audiences respond to me really well when they're the exact opposite of me. Now, why is this? I'll tell you why. Because it's different. They're not used to seeing somebody who looks like me, sounds like me, comes from the background that I came from. It's different, and on top of the fact that I'm actually good and I actually have substance, if I may say so myself, that makes me stand out in those audiences. Unfortunately, today, it's not even a requirement to have substance anymore. As I just explained to you, that like when people ask Tim Ferriss, why don't you have more women on the show? Well, Tim said, well, the fucking point of my show is to have interesting people. Well, who cares if it's a man or a woman? I agree with that. At the same time, if there's some oldish white people without tattoos who never played a sport in their lives who want to book me because I'm interesting and different than what they're used to seeing, I'll take the check. Or they got to pay me, but I'll show up. Why? It's different. That's why they're interested. I understand that that's why they're interested. They probably don't say that, but I understand the game that's being played. I'm articulating this to you so that you can understand the game, not just let the game use you as it's going to use you, but understand what is happening so that you can learn and create a formula for how you can leverage the game as it is. And when the game changes, we'll talk about the changes in the game. And if there are different angles to the game, which there are, which is why we have damn near 2,000 episodes here, you'll understand the different angles of the game, and your job And this is the concept of knowledge versus wisdom, is knowing which information to use at which points and which information to not use at different points. So don't take everything that I say here as dogma. No, Dre, you said this in this episode, and then you said this in this episode. Which one is it? The answer is it's both. It is your job to figure out which one to use, when and where and why. That's your job. All right, we call that thinking, for anybody who didn't know. Unfortunately today, as I said, it's not a requirement to have substance. There was a woman who played, I believe it was Vanderbilt University. They didn't have a kicker for their football game, so they went and got a woman from the female soccer team, because they don't have a male soccer team apparently. So they got a woman from the girls soccer team, and she was the kicker for the game that day. Now Vanderbilt was having a very bad season. The coach ended up getting fired right after the season ended. They got their asses kicked in the particular game that the female kicker was there, not because of her, because they were trash already, and she didn't help. But she didn't really do anything. I saw a couple of the kicks that she did. I think it was one kick in particular she did, and she had kicked off. And of course, ESPN, who's gone full woke, they made a big news story about this. And everybody who plays the identity politics game made a big deal about the fact that this woman, I believe her name was Sarah, she went and was a kicker on a men's Division I football team during the game. And this was a milestone moment, because she was the first person to have done it, and this, and this. Now, listen. Was she actually good at football? The answer is absolutely not. Now, Sarah, if you're listening to this is not a personal knock on you, but was she actually good at football? Was she a good kicker? No, she was not. I saw the kick that she did, and I said, all right, that was not impressive. It wasn't even good. But I'll tell you something else about Sarah. Sarah, hopefully she didn't turn me off after I said that. But she's going to get awards and honors and probably a statue one day for the fact that she was the first woman to participate in a Division I men's football game. And again, this is not a knock on Sarah personally, because as far as I know, she didn't lobby for the gig. It's not like she was picketing outside the football locker room saying, hey, put a girl on the football team, we deserve it too. She wasn't doing that. She got asked to be there, and she accepted it, and she went and did it. But I looked at how she was being celebrated by so many people. Now again, while I don't personally agree with putting her on the field, it was more publicity stunt than it definitely wasn't a football move. It wasn't the quality of the team type of move. It's not like she made the team better, but this is the game that's being played. This is part of the identity politics game, and even though I do not agree with it, I recognize that it happens. I'm not Don Quixote, fighting against the windmill. You understand? If you're female, there are lanes wide open for this kind of stuff. If you're a person of color, if you're LGBTQ, there are lanes wide open for this stuff. It's happening every single day. This is an asset that you can leverage. Don't say nobody ever told you. And if you happen to be good on top of all these assets you can leverage, even better. But again, being good is optional. You don't have to be good at all, as I just explained. Point number 3. The topic once again today is leveraging your standout assets. Number 3, what can you do with all this? Here's the question you ask yourself. Where is there less supply and high demand for you? Seems like a simple question. It seems like a logical, quote unquote, common sense question, but a question nonetheless many people never ask themselves. Where is the demand high but the supply low? Now, how would you even know? Most of the time you don't. So the way that you find this out is by experimenting, trying different things, leveraging your personal initiative. Where can I go? Let me go try 5, 6, 7 different things in 5, 6, 7 different places. See where people really like what I'm offering, and there's not too many other people offering the same thing. And then when you find those places, you stay there. You build a house there. Or you take up residency in that place, metaphorically speaking, and you keep delivering until that well runs dry. That's what you do. Where are there mostly men and you could be the standout female? Where are there mostly white people and you're a person of color? Where are there a bunch of old people and you're young? Where's everybody going one way and you're going the other way, and they're open to somebody going the other way? Notice that none of these are speaking to your actual abilities. You know, nothing that I said here today said anything about your actual skill. I mean, I did say things about it, but everything I said was that you don't even have to have it. And I'm the work on your game guy telling you this. So I want y'all to understand something about me, that even if, as I said already, even if I don't see eye to eye with something that's going on, I'm still going to make sure I expose you to that aspect of the game so you get it. So if and when you come across it, even if you think like me and don't agree with it, you can still recognize that it's happening there. You can respect that it's happening, and you can strategize for, all right, how do I work around this? How do I work through this? Or how do I work with this? These are things you need to consider, because the game is the game, and I guarantee you there will never come a time in your life when every aspect of the game is working in your favor and completely in agreement with you and your perspective. That will never happen. So you better learn how to play the game. In an ideal world, everything would just go exactly the way that you want it to go, right? Or the way that I want it to go. But it is my duty to explain the game to you, whatever the game may be. That's why the show is called Work on Your Game. Even the parts that are not completely game or merit based. There are many times in life where I've seen someone get an opportunity that they did not deserve, that they had not earned, that they did not have the game to hold down, and would actually make whoever chose them worse because that person that they chose was not good at all. But I understood why they did it. I could appreciate why it happened. And oh yeah, everything that I said here today, I was talking about females, I was talking about people of color, I talked about LGBTQ community. So what if you're a white male? Now, I didn't mention white male. So if you're male and you're white, what can you do with everything I've talked about here today? The answer is you can't do a damn thing. All right, forget about it. All right, if you're a white male, none of this applies to you. All right, none of these things is going to help you out at all. All right, doesn't mean I don't have love for any white males, but understand that the game is not leaning in your favor right now. And I said this back in the summer of 2020, the worst thing you could be right now is a white male. All right, so if you're a white male, you're just gonna have to have skill. All right, you just work on your game. All right, you can't leverage any of this shit that I'm talking about here today. And that's tongue in cheek, but I'm being serious at the exact same time. And if I'm wrong about that, white males, reach out to me and let me know. Let me know if I'm wrong about this. We are going to speak about the game as it is. And when the pendulum swings and it goes a different direction and different things are happening, we will make a new episode and we'll talk about that. But right now, look, y'all know, if you're a white male, you didn't need me to tell you what I just said. You know it. All right, you walking around, you hear it, you see it. You see how people are reacting to you. You see how people are responding to you, depending on how active you are online, how opinionated you are. You see what people are saying to you with no regard to the actual substance of what you're saying, but just who you are as a person. Identity politics. This is the game right now. Again, it ain't everywhere, but it's out there. You follow what I'm saying? If you're a man, white man, unless you're gay, or you plan on living as a woman, all right, the game is not leaning in your favor right now. It doesn't mean you can't win. It just means you gotta go a little bit uphill, or you got a little bit of an incline that you gotta climb. That's what it is. All right. Now, if you're gay or you plan on becoming a woman, then listen to this whole episode all over again from that perspective. But if you're a straight white man, right, forget it. All right, right now, just lay low for a little bit. Just keep your head down, do your work. Work on your game, keep getting better, develop skill, because you will be judged on merit, whereas everybody else, they're not. Don't be mad at the messenger. Recapping today's class, which is leveraging your standout assets, whatever they may be. Point number one. I'm not a fan of identity politics, but identity politics is being played these days, so we can't ignore it. Like Tim Ferriss was asked, why don't you have more women on your show? He said, I choose interesting guests. And I don't choose guests trying to balance out male versus female. And while I completely agree with that, we all understand, I'm sure Tim understands as well, that in many areas of life, that ain't the game that's being played. People are getting jobs that they're unqualified for. People are getting opportunities that they should never gotten. People are getting victories that they don't deserve. People are getting recognition that they did not earn based on their skills, accepted to colleges they shouldn't be going to. Why? All based on their identity. Male, or not male, but female, person of color, LGBTQ, where you're from, underprivileged, et cetera, et cetera. What does all this mean for you? Number two, you gotta identify where you can make this game work in your favor. This is what I meant in episode 1210 when I told you don't complain, play the game. I'm a youngish looking black guy. I have tattoos. I come from the sports world. One audience that responds really well to me is an audience that's the complete opposite of everything that I just said. On top of the fact that I actually have substance. But these days, you don't even have to have substance. Point number three, what can you do? Ask yourself, where is there less supply and high demand for you? Where is the supply low but the demand high? That's where you need to figure out where those places are, and you need to stay in those places as often as you possibly can. And this is part of the game that you can play. Anybody who doesn't understand this, understand you're leaving money and opportunity on the table every single day. Where are you? If you're a person of color, go find a place where there aren't too many of them delivered. If you're a young person, go find where the old people are and they want to hear from somebody who's different than what they're used to seeing. None of these speak to your actual abilities, and I'm the guy who tells you to work on your game. We still got to talk about these things, because even if I don't agree with certain aspects of the game, doesn't mean we're going to act like they do not exist. And if you're a white male, none of this stuff applies to you, because the game is not leaning in your favor today. But listen, 6 months from now, everything could change. In the game of power, things change all the time. So stay tuned. When that changes, I'll give you a different message. But for now, y'all know what it is. And oh yeah, If you haven't sent me a text yet and got into my text community, send me a text message at 305-384-6894. White males, you're listening to this. If you agree or disagree with what I said here today, text me and you let me know. If I got something wrong, you let me know. 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre, all